Russian forces carry out nuclear drills as fears grow about an escalation of the war in Ukraine.
Sandbags at the windows, slogans all over the walls. What the Russian forces left behind after fleeing a Ukrainian school they had been using as a barracks.
Come and take a look at this. This is the English language room. And see what they've done to the map of Great Britain.
Increasing tension as Russia and NATO carry out nuclear exercises, with Vladimir Putin threatening to use nuclear weapons in the war with Ukraine. The Mirror salutes Ukraine's President Zelensky after his address to the paper's Pride of Britain Awards, where a number of his people were honoured. Leading the news today, there is renewed concern this morning about the prospect of the war in Ukraine becoming a nuclear conflict. The Russian President Vladimir Putin sat in a bunker watching his forces practice nuclear exercises, while NATO has also been carrying out nuclear drills. Both are part of annual exercises, but Putin's threats to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine have greatly increased tensions. In a moment, we'll hear from our Moscow correspondent. First, though, to the city of Kherson in southern Ukraine, a pivotal battleground between the two sides. Kyiv's forces have reclaimed territory to the north of the city, including one village visited by a team from Sky News. Ukraine's defence minister has admitted the counter-offensive is proving difficult because of poor weather and the nature of the terrain. The city of Kherson is strategically important to both Russia and Ukraine due to its position on the Dnipro River and proximity to annexed Crimea. Our team entered one of these surrounding villages, Velika Oleksandrivka, now dealing with the aftermath of the Russian occupation. And from there, Sky's international correspondent John Sparks sent this report.
As the Russians retreat from communities in Kherson, residents are left with reminders of their stay. A swathe of destruction in towns and villages like Velika Oleksandrivka. It can be difficult to take it all in. This quiet community spent months on the front line. And the fire chief suggested we investigate the local school. He led us into an underground room, and we could see it had been used by the Russians. We saw lewd graffiti and the letter Z, the symbol of Russia's war in Ukraine, along with the date the Russians took over this town, 2602. Fire Chief Volodymyr beckoned us into the gloom, and we realized it was more than just a bomb shelter. This community school had been turned into a military base.
Бачите, які вони собі умови здали, це все з магазинів, людські занавіски, килими, подушки. Все завісили, це вони тут проживали.
How many soldiers live down here, do you think?
Ну, щонайменше чоловік 200.
You think at least 200?
Щонайменше 200? Так.
This subterranean labyrinth had been dressed in soft furnishings, the occupants seemingly planning to stay.
It's very strange. There are a dozen rooms down here, maybe more, and they've all been decorated with this tent-like effect. The soldiers have been trying to make it look like home, I think.
There were multiple kitchens and places to eat, and some items looked surprisingly luxurious. We found perfumes and silk bedding. Members of this garrison made a swift departure, but some have threatened to return.
It's interesting, this message left on the wall down here says, soon we'll return, soon we'll come back. Sinister.
The war was fought on the upper 3 floors in a school that had been turned into a fortress. The classrooms were sandbagged with occasional slits so the Russians could fire their weapons. The school library deployed as a blast wall. And there were Putin-esque views scrolled on the walls.
Come and take a look at this. This is the English language room. and see what they've done to the map of Great Britain.
The UK and Ireland had been covered with a Z, plus Rossiya, or Russia, at the bottom.
It's sad, isn't it? I mean, the school's been trashed.
Звичайно, сумно. Взагалі сумно все. Побистріше перемогти їх і почати все відбудовувати.
But it will cost hundreds of billions of pounds to rebuild this country, and the conflict goes on. Most residents fled before the Russian occupation, but those who stayed have been marked by it. Tatiana told us the soldiers were only boys.
Да, вони сказали, що їх заставили. Ну, якщо, каже, ми вернемося назад, нас наші розстріляють. Це так вони самі казали, хлопці, молоді ці росіяни, хлопчики, і кажуть, якщо ми назад вернемося, наші ж нас уб'ють.
Did you feel sorry for them?
Дітей шкода всіх. Господи, випаш мене. Ото коза, щоб мене допустили, я б сама його по кусочках різала б. Ножом би, отого Путіна. Імперії захотів, а?
This unpopular war may have come to a close in this town at least. But the battle to the south for the city of Kherson will be savage. Joy in liberation must be balanced with the pain. John Sparks, Sky News, in Velika Oleksandrivka.
Well, while forces on both sides prepare for the battle in Kherson, President Putin has been overseeing nuclear military exercises just as NATO rehearses its own drills, and it has served to ratchet up tension. Our Moscow correspondent Diana Magnay has the latest now from Moscow.
Russia has to notify the US about these kinds of exercises under arms control agreements. But every time Vladimir Putin talks about or exercises his nuclear forces, it is intended to send a message. These are annual routine exercises, and NATO is also holding its own 2-week nuclear drills at the moment. And generally, these exercises of Russia take place at this time of year. But Russia has already exercised its nuclear forces once this year already, and that was just a week before Vladimir Putin sent troops into Ukraine. And it also comes on the back of a flurry of phone calls between Russia's Defence Minister Sergei Shoigu and his counterparts in the West, in Turkey, and also in China and India, where he repeated to all his professed concerns, Russia's professed concerns, that Ukraine is preparing some kind of dirty bomb to use against Russia, and that has provoked concern in Western capitals that is precisely what Russia is planning to do, that Russia is preparing some kind of false flag operation. What Vladimir Putin appears to be trying to do is to send a message to the West that Russia is prepared to escalate, presumably in the hope that that will scare Western powers enough that they will put pressure on Volodymyr Zelensky to actually sit down at the negotiating table. But given the headwinds that Ukraine has on the battlefield, it looks like Vladimir Putin will have to wait quite a long time for that.